Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Friday highlight video, which is going to be looking at the Tier 7 French destroyer. This is the one that has been in the game for much longer than the new line that's currently hitting the game and still in early access at the time of recording this video. And I would guess and say that perhaps this ship would be pronounced as the... let me look here. The Vauquelin? Which I don't know if I'm going to keep that up or not. But yeah, we're just going to call it the Tier 7 French DD at this point. I looked a lot of information up. That was the one thing I didn't look up before I started recording the video. Anyhow, I digress. So, what I want to do today is we're going to have a double feature because both battles go relatively quickly. They're not a longer duration. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the playstyle. And a little bit more of a play-by-play analysis somewhat in this. But as we're setting up here, there's going to be a few minutes before we really get into any action. So let me go ahead and just talk about the ship. According to WoW's wiki, the pros of the ship is the high burst damage with the main battery reload booster that you get. I'll talk a little more about it. It says it has the second highest health pool behind Z39 and the longest main battery range tied with the Sims. I don't know if that's still accurate or not due to how the game develops over time, because some of these things are a bit older. And I was trying to find the main battery range here. Yeah, no, it still has some among the best range. And then speedy 68 knots for the torpedoes. It says this is second fastest at the tier. But I think it's 5th now because there's been other destroyers that have since come into the game. Wider, more friendly gun and torpedo arcs compared to predecessors, and high speed of 45 knots with the engine boost. Your cons, on the other hand, are having no smoke generators, so you have increasingly difficulty of disengaging in your vulnerability to carriers because your AA sucks. That's one of the things they don't list here. You have the 3rd worst AA in the game. Torpedoes are the same as the Tier 5 Jaguars with unimpressive, although not insignificant, maximum damage, and a fairly large detectability range and turning circle radius. As you see right now, we can get our best concealment down to 6.6. So what you see me doing here at the moment before we kind of talk a little more about the ship as the game progresses, I'm taking my time here. And I think one of the strengths you have with the French DDs, beyond her not having great concealment, so to speak, at Tier 7, is with that main battery reload booster, if you find out where the destroyers are before they find out where you are, you can often position yourself in a way where you get the jump on them. So I'm kind of patrolling out here in mid. We have destroyer out on both flanks, but we're kind of mids open. So I see the Z31s over there, and I'm thinking maybe the Z31 wants to break through that gap there. And I want to try to see if I can get some torpedoes off of the New Mexico, as you have 8-kilometer range torpedoes. So you have a 1.4 kilometer gap between concealment and your max torpedo range. So you do have to be a little bit mindful with that. We also see the Farragut's coming right in towards us. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch to our guns, and we're going to use our main battery reload booster, as you see it going here now. At this close, it's not too difficult to land shells, even though he's more bow in, but he's going to turn out because he wants to get all of his guns off on us here, which is going to be unfortunate for him. And we're going to lose our main battery reload booster. And this main battery reload booster, we get in total 4 of them. It has a 100-second cooldown time and an action time of 15 seconds. So then your DPM begins to fall off quite quickly. I mean, during those 15 seconds, you're kind of maybe somewhat comparable with the Akazuki, the Hold Your Own. I think the WoW's Wiki talked about it a little bit. But then you'll be at more of a disadvantage as that longer reload time kicks in, which is just under, I think, 5 seconds with the Adrenaline Rush right now kicking in here. But as the Z31 also decides to go and step out, I'm not sure why. He was safe to stay out there because the battleship wasn't going down that line. Alas, he did. He may have felt safe because of the submarine being here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and throw some torpedoes out at the submarine because, there's a Colorado right here. So it makes sense that that submarine may want to stay periscope depth or like on the surface. So I don't see any reason why not to go ahead and throw torpedoes out here. Our team is pretty focused on this sub being here, and so I'm telling the Colorado I'm going to come and assist him. As the sub got a couple of torpedoes off. We see the oil slick on the surface from the submarine. There's a lot of action that happens here in a short amount of time, but he's on fire from the New Orleans. But our torpedo, I think maybe we would have landed one there. I'm not 100%. So there's a lot of action that happened there. Now the big thing that is really helpful here with this particular game, I mean, one is we are top tier if I remember correctly. But once you've taken out those pesky destroyers, then that opens up where now you take this French DD with having the best range at for a tier 7 destroyer. You start opening up at long range because you're going to be using your speed. We're turning here, but we're about 33 knots. We get our engine boost going. It's a French engine boost to 20% on the maximum speed. So we're going to start harassing them at long range. We've taken out their 2 destroyers, their submarine, and now this is where you have this more typical French destroyer play at the longer range that you often see, particularly at the high tier, but you can start doing it at tier 7, I think, and up, because these other tier 6, even if you see tier 5, tier 7 battleships, I mean, their shell velocity is beginning to increase somewhat more, but when you're playing at the range with your maneuverability and your speed, you can often juke and dodge salvos here, as we do want to use our range, and we want to try to get fire set with its main battery as well. I think I distracted myself there. So your standard main battery reload time is 5 seconds. It's with the build that I think I have right now. If I take main battery A specialist, it'll drop down to 4.75 seconds. I have a specific commander on here that has an enhanced adrenaline rush skill, so I get negative 0.25 rather than just a negative 0.20%. And we're going to go ahead and use our boost here. Now you see I don't have Superintendent, which would give us a 4th engine boost and a 5th main battery reload booster, because we've already used one as we get the New Mexico there with a fire. But what's fun here, like on this map here in New Haven, is that we're just going to be using the islands as we speed up and get a little bit closer to try to get fire set. So now we're going to use our next main battery reload booster. So particularly with the French destroyers and even the cruisers, that when you get that main battery reload booster, is you're looking for ships to use their damage control party, and then after it's gone down, then utilizing the main battery reload booster and get some fire set on the enemy ships. Your fire chance is 9% without taking any of the combat signals. If you do, you'll bump it up to 10%. Then you could take, if you really want to, you could take the 2-point demolition expert and get it up another 1%. So you have 11% fire chance with these shells. I would say let me talk a little more about the ship before I can give you my overall impressions with this tier 7 French DD. I think in general, I will say though real quick, when you're top tier, she's really strong. When you're mid tier, she's kind of good, okay, as long as you understand French DDs. And if you're bottom tier versus tier 9s, well, there's just a lot of other destroyers at tier 8, tier 9 that can really begin to punish you, where it makes it more difficult. Now, one of the things that makes the French DD line so much stronger is the damage saturation. I need to find the specific wording where when it comes to your survivability, you get this unique saturation mechanic that allows these French destroyers to take reduced damage after a certain threshold, and that enhances your durability. I mean, it's pretty typical that you don't get heals on destroyers. I mean, it's kind of seeing a little bit more and more in the game, particularly with like premium special destroyers. But you'll take reduced damage. Like I had a clanmate some time ago. He was quite upset because he was on, I think it was Sleeping Giant, and he torpedoed a French DD, and that French DD was going so fast that every single destroyer hit the midsection of the ship. So then the ship just went invulnerable after it took like 1 or 2 torps, and no more damage happened, even though he hit like with another 3 or 4 destroyers. or 3-4 torpedoes on that destroyer. And so you can kind of saturate a compartment of the ship so much that it just no longer gives you hit points. At least it was from the torpedoes, where if you're firing high explosive on the enemy ship or on you, they're going to take reduced damage. So that's kind of one of the things that they did with the French GD line. I think except the Aigle is excluded from that, if I remember right, where you know, you have a, how do they phrase it? You have an infinite amount of hit points on other destroyers. How do we word it here in the WoW's wiki? Non-French destroyers and Aigle have an infinite HP pool in their casemate compartment, and thus it cannot become damaged. It cannot become saturated. Penetrating hits this compartment will always do full damage. Where besides the Aigle, the French GDs had this damage saturation gimmick. So that improves survivability, makes it a little bit more friendly to play, but it's still more difficult to get. It's not the easiest destroyer line to play because you're much more of a gunboat destroyer than you are a hybrid or a torpedo destroyer, right? So here you're going to see the post-battle results, and we're going to go to our next game. I think it's on New Dawn. So let me talk a little bit more with the ship, but I think this next clip that we start off, it happens quite quickly. So this previous battle, it was, hey, this map's quite big. Let me find out where the destroyers are on New Haven because they can catch you off guard because of having a 6.6 conceal. Where here on New Dawn, I mean, it's pretty typical. You have a destroyer that will come to the left of right where I'm aiming or to the right there. So we always know pretty much where a destroyer, if they decide to push this cap, where they're going to come in from. Some of them will go down on the 10 line. But because, again, we are, I think we're, again, top tier because this is, again, a Farragut. He decides, as he's already gotten his torpedoes off because he hasn't fired at us yet. So I'm expecting torps, but we're going to use our engine boost and we're going to start sailing and maneuvering away. Where we're going to get a first blood quite quickly on this poor little American destroyer who never decides to use his smoke screen. So that, I mean, if I was a Farragut and I ran into that Vauquelin using his main battery reload boost, I would smoke up pretty quick. So that's kind of, I was thinking he was going to do that. And then there's no other destroyers here. I think if there was a cruiser here, I think it disengaged, went to a different part of the map. So now that opens up for us. So we have this initial close quarters combat. We take out the enemy destroyers, and now we can just push. So the goal here now is we're going into mindset. You see the enemy Nagato who's already sailing away. We're going to work to collapse this flank. And then the enemy teams are kind of a bit strong at the Bravo cap. So with our 13-kilometer range, if we can get any shots in that Bravo, we're going to help there as well. But we're going to become more of a long range. We're going to really embrace our gunboat French destroyer-ness, if you will. So let's just talk a little more about the ship specifics. So I said that this ship has terrible AA, some of the ship parameters. Yes, your AA strength is garbage. You have the third worst AA in the game, only beaten by Yudachi and the Jupiter. In terms of your AP shells, their damage, they're actually really good. So these guns, let me double check and make sure I say it right. They're 139 millimeter guns. So when you go to utilize your armor piercing, you can easily get citadels on tier 5, tier 6, tier 7 broadside cruisers. So definitely don't be afraid to use the armor piercing on these guns. Their damage that they do is that they have in terms of number of damage, this isn't talking about damage per minute, but just damage. They're the 4th best in the game at tier 7, 2600. When we talk about the high explosive shells and their damage, then you have the 5th best damage in the game. And then we talk about AP DPM. You have the 6th best in the game. And then high explosive DPM, you drop down a bit more and you have the 10th best in the game. And of course, that's also influenced a little bit by the main battery reload booster. So you always want to try to be utilizing that when you can. So you have a pretty strong gun platform with these 539mm guns tied with your main battery reload booster. Now the challenge with that main battery reload booster is you do want to make sure that you're trying to get your money's worth out of it, as I'm going to cut out about 15-20 seconds as we moved up a bit further here. As I was trying to get closer to use torpedoes, but this Nagato is really giving up the map control, allowing me and Doom to push up and begin punishing here. So I decide now's the time to use that main battery reload booster, and we're going to use our engine boost. So here I'm working to get behind the Nagato. So either A, he has to kind of keep sailing as he does. He's right now he's focused on Doom. I'm checking back, seeing how much hit points Doom has, because Nagato hits really hard with her guns. I think they're 410s if I remember right off the top of my head. So what we want to do is we actually want to pull the Nagato's attention towards us. We want to help our teammates. We want to help our clanmate. As we want Doom to be able to use more of that. I think he's in New York, that German HE with that nice quarter penetration, and maybe getting some fire set to bring this Nagato down even more quickly, because again, you can see the enemy team is giving up a lot of map control. And we're going to be playing at range here. We could be playing further back. The other thing is not just simply going full throttle all the time, it's playing with our throttle. So I'm knowing the Nagato is about to reload here, so I'm actually going to go bow in here. So it looks like I'm closing the distance, and then we're going to kill our speed. And I want to see if I can actually juke him. He switched to high explosive for us now, where these shells land too far forward of us, and they do. So we don't take any damage there, but now I can see his front turrets are swinging around, and they should be reloaded, I'm thinking. So I'm like, okay, I got to be mindful of that. We're paying attention. You always want to pay attention to turrets of an enemy ship that you're engaging, especially when you're a gunboat. So I decide, let's go ahead and kill the speed again. He's about to die. Let's go and get the torpedo rack off. There's the salvo, and yeah, he got us decently well that time. So one of the things in general with this ship is your survivability, and I'm trying to find the health here. You have the 5th best in the game, 18,100 hit points. So you get to trade a little bit of health now in this type of scenario, and also having the French damage saturation working in your favor. When you do get torpedoes off with this destroyer and hits, that's great, especially if you have enemy ships pushing into you, like we have this New York. Yeah, so we're definitely top tier in this game, and we're just punishing the battleships, tier 7, then we're punishing the Mackinson, now we're going to be punishing the New York. So you're always looking, if you can kite away, that's great, and then you have pretty good torpedo angles anyhow on this ship. In terms of torpedoes, we were talking about their speed. We referenced that earlier. They have the 6th best speed in the game. Your reload time, you have the 11th best in the game. In terms of max damage, they sit at 14th. So when you're looking at this ship in certain lenses, the ship can be, and compared to other tier 7 destroyers, it's pretty okay. It's not amazing, right? What makes the Vauquelin really amazing is when you become really good at playing the French destroyers, which I have, like the Marceau, which is great. And so that's kind of helped me get my head around this destroyer line quite well. The other thing I want to make mention here in terms of the playstyle real quick before I talk more about the ship in general, is that Doom was on really low health. So I started charging the New York, and I wanted the New York to shoot me instead of Doom, and psych him out. The New York actually could have went ahead and killed Doom in New York, or let's say if I had another teammate and a cruiser behind me. So I kind of flashed, I go broadside, I start charging, make the New York panic. I got to shoot the DD. I can't shoot the cruiser because with my damage saturation, and the shell's just not going to do as much damage to me as a destroyer in general with a battleship, then I can easily just give up and trade up more hit points. As I think I look back here at some point, maybe not right at the moment, but I think Doom was down to 1,000 hit points. But anyhow, again, as we're kind of moving into the post-battle results now, here shortly, with the ship, I think she's pretty okay for a tier 7 destroyer. But in terms of, you know, when you're top tier, she's quite strong. Most destroyers tend to be. It's not true for all of them, but most tend to be. You're really strong against tier 5s, tier 6s. If it's a straight up 7 match, you're like, yeah, it's okay. But once you start seeing 8s and 9s, this destroyer really begins to get pushed to its limits more, where you have to be good in utilizing your speed, WASD hacks, being smart when you're trading engagements with other destroyers that are tier 8, tier 9. I mean, it would suck to go up against a Kitakaze, an Akazuki. Okay, if you can make that engagement more brief. That's probably when you are playing against destroyers, you're really playing around that main battery reload booster. Most time, unless you just dominate them, you know, against tier 5s or tier 6s, and then letting that main battery reload boost come off cooldown, and then you can pick another engagement. Let's say you're going up against another tier 8, tier 9 destroyer, and playing with that. So you just have to be mindful that any information you can get, or if you know the map pretty well, you tend to want to know where the enemy destroyers are at, usually, before you push in. Now, of course, in this last battle here, it didn't matter because it was like, well, if they're tier 5s, tier 6s, if they're going to come in, they're going to push right in either these two ways. So I already know the map well enough to know, hey, I'm just already have a plan as a whole. I can take the engagement and be fine. Otherwise, if you're seeing more of the higher tier ones, you tend to want to see where they're at first, and then make your plan, because, you know, it sucks to be caught off guard if there's a little destroyer wolf pack or destroyer that might outtrade you more easily with its DPM, and if you don't have any backup or and whatnot nearby. So yeah, with that being said, I think this destroyer in general is pretty okay. I don't think she's amazing when you are top tier. She's struggles when she's not, but at tier 7 she's good in general. And for those who want to have a little bit more of a exciting play style with the speed boost, main battery load, a booster, decent guns, really good AP for broadside cruisers and that with those 139mm guns, flexing your maneuverability. You like playing the open gunboat because, again, you don't have a repair party, you don't have a smoke screen, so it's a little bit more of a high risk, high reward if you like playing this type of destroyer here in Modern Warships. But with that being said, that's going to bring the Friday highlight to a close. Tomorrow I'll do an upgrade commander build video on this ship, and we can go over some more specific possibilities in terms of the build. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I would appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.